The film we watched was Argo, which was produced by Ben Affleck and George Clooney, filmed in 2012, and the rating for Argo on Rotten Tomatoes is a 96%, and we all watched it on Prime Video.
Relevant background information that is helpful in the film goes as follows. The tension was between the U.S. and Iran due to the leadership that the U.S. and Canada had put in place for the benefit of Iran. This leader wasn't as effective as the U.S. and Canada had thought and led Iran into a time of famine and struggle. The Iranian people hated him and wanted a complete new ruler that they could appoint themselves. The setting that Argo takes place in is really important to put into context what was going on. 1979 to 1980, Iran takes over the U.S. Embassy in retaliation of the leader the U.S. put in place. This film was located in Iran.
In the film Argo, there were a lot of major characters, but to name a couple, there was Tony Mendez, who's the protagonist. He was played by Ben Affleck. Tony Mendez works in the CIA, and he's considered smart, strategic, thoughtful, helpful, and determined. He is the person who led all the characters through the film and really cared about his mission. Lester Siegel, who was played by Alan Arkin, was the person who was producing the fake movie, and he was stern, hardworking, and smart. He was told a couple times in the movie that he's got stamina, and it really was true. Then there was John Chambers, who was played by John Goodman. He was the beginning helper to the fake movie, and he was one of the best sci-fi makeup artists. And he really stuck with this project, and he was determined, thoughtful, and strategic. All of the hostages, so Katie and Joe Stafford, Mark and Cora Lejeck, Bob Anders, and Ken Taylor, they all started very worried, nervous, and untrusting towards Tony, because who really should they trust as them being hostages? But eventually they all learned their roles throughout the film, and they were able to help the mission well. They all showed about the same amount of character development.
Some essential questions that we had for the movie was it right for the US and Canada to put a leader into Iran? Another one is, what is the status of the Iranian government before and after these events occurred? Our last question is, how hard is it to have to trust someone in order to possibly save your life? This was a big question throughout the movie just because it was so hard for the hostages to trust the US to save them.
Key scenes to look out for during Argo. The first one is in the embassy, when the U.S. officials are trying to shred and burn the classified documents that they are worried about the Iranian forces taking over. The second critical scene to look out for is in the Canadian safe house, when Tony tries to convince them that he is their only way out safely and that they have a higher chance of not making it out if they don't come with him.
So we have a good amount of vocabulary for Argo, just because it is very political based and there's a lot of political words that we may not know. So demonstrations are public meetings or parades in which people show how they feel about an issue. These are kind of like protests. A diplomat is a person who deals tactfully with others. An embassy is an ambassador and his entourage collectively. An espionage is the systematic use of spies to get military or political secrets. Execution is the act of abolishing some aim or executing some order. The Hezbollah is a Shiite terrorist organization with strong ties to Iran. Hostage is a prisoner held by one party to ensure that another party will meet specified terms. And theocracy is a government controlled by religious leaders.
If you ever want to continue researching about the story of Argo, you can read the book Our Man in Tehran, the true story behind the secret mission to save 6 Americans during the Iran hostage crisis and the foreign ambassador who worked with the CIA to bring them home. And that's written by Robert A. Wright, and that is just more in depth. It's related to Argo because this whole movie was based on a true story.
It is essential to know that the United States had past relations with Iran because it shows why the two countries relate the way that they do. To most US citizens, Iran has a very negative feeling around it. At the beginning of the movie, it made the viewer feel like Iran was in the right, and the United States was stepping out of line. However, by the end of the movie, it showed us that the US felt attacked, and learning of historical events is crucial to be able to understand why the world acts the way that it does. At the beginning of the movie, the storyline points blame towards the US and Canada for placing the ruler in Iran against the will of the people. Then, later in the movie, blame and fault lays upon the Iranian people and leaders for taking the hostages and demanding things from the US.
So, a big question after watching this movie is, how do events in the past influence us today? And this was a question that was from our Modern World History syllabus. So, events in the past influence us today by showing their significance. Wars and tension between areas cause uprising, and the media can become very involved. If it wasn't for movies like Argo and books alike, it is very possible that many wouldn't be as educated as we are today. The influence of media on the world is extremely strong, so having the opportunity to watch a movie about a war to educate us is very helpful to understand and learn about events in the past.
The perspective and bias is really important to look out for in this film because it is very apparent which side the bias leans toward. This movie shows almost complete bias from the American and Canadian sides, with few interactions showing the position of the Iranian people up close and personally. To show more opinions and reach everyone, the film team could have gotten more video of the Iranian leaders and why they were doing what they were doing, and what motivation backed those decisions to hold hostages and try to kill others. After all watching the movie and conversing about it, and after careful consideration, we think the film gets a rating of 3.5 out of 4 stars due to the incredible historical context and effort that was put into this film. Another notable feature is the emotions that the characters depict accurately throughout the movie.
Argo was a great movie to watch and was very worthwhile, so we definitely recommend it. Thanks for watching!